the Are There True Heroines in Star Trek panel. I am very excited about this panel, mostly because I am joined by some pretty incredible women who have inspired me through my Trek journeys. So I would like to introduce Ms. Kitty Swink, also known as Bajoran Minister Roseanne, or the Vorta in charge of the Jem'Hadar ship Luarin on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Mary Chieffo, the mother of Klingons, Chancellor Laurel herself, and Chase Masterson, Leeta, the more than just meets the eye Dabo girl, and the amazing Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, the walking Star Trek encyclopedia. I was gonna say exclamation point mark because that's what Ryan says, but you're like a walking encyclopedia. But
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. It's you're a wealth of knowledge. You all are a wealth of knowledge on Trek and also being heroes in your own communities. And that's how I'd like to start, to point out some of the stuff that you all have been doing in your life, and how that, promotes heroism in our world. So I'm going to start with Kitty, who now has a puppy.
As a goober. That's a heroic act. That's amazing.
Okay, so let's...
I was like, answer it.
The universe said, all energy on Kitty. Hold the pain.
It's your time.
Hero for surviving just that moment. Okay.
Yes, so tell us a little bit about your work with Purple Strides and what that means to you.
I'm a 19-year, March 3rd, I become a 19-year survivor of pancreatic cancer. That's when I had my surgery. At the time I was diagnosed, I had a 3% chance of making it for 5 years. Through the work of a lot of people, but including the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, that survival rate is now 12%. And that's why I devote so much time, Armin and I, and Jonathan Frakes, who lost his brother to pancreatic cancer, and now John Billingsley, who lost his mom, have a thing called Team Trek, not with Team Trump, oh my God. Shocking. It's because Armin started Trek against Trump, but okay, that's it. That's 2016. So we have a team for Purple Stride, which is the annual fundraiser, but we do a lot of work with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. We're changing the rate of survival, and more importantly than just that, we're also focusing on what happens to women and people of color and people who don't get diagnosed, and we're trying to get early diagnosis because that's all the difference in the world for this. So between that and the other work I've done as an advocate over my life, I'm really happy to do that. I think it's incumbent upon people who are lucky to share that luck with other people.
Yeah, definitely. So Chase, we know about, or many know about your tireless work with the Pop Culture Hero Coalition, and the amazing work that it puts out into the world. Kindness and compassion and empathy are important things that we all need to learn. So tell us a little bit about that and the heroic strides that the organization is making.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been an incredible journey, and our program is actually called the Heroic Journey, and it's modeled after the Campbellian structure, the Christopher Vogler structure of the hero's journey. And what it does is it discusses, it talks about, it teaches the concepts that we understand through storytelling on how to be heroes for ourselves and for other people. So it all basically starts with, in our program, it starts with identity, and it starts with understanding and celebrating who each person is. Because when people have bigotry and bullying, when people bully, when people have LGBTQIA plus hate or lack of inclusion, when there's a lack of equity of any kind, it's all based in fear. And so we teach kids and adults to be secure in their own identity so that they can be supportive of others. When you think about it, it's all based in mental health. People who are mentally healthy don't squash other people's human rights. I was going to say another word, but we'll keep it there. People who are mentally healthy support and celebrate and uphold and promote each other's human rights. So beginning with identity and then going on to mindfulness, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, which is basics, cognitive behavioral therapy. Then we talk about self-compassion. And we really go through all of these concepts with kids in ways that are fun, in ways that they can relate to. And that is through stories from TV, films, and literature, including comics. So in really fun, relatable ways, we teach children that they can be like their own heroes, that they can be Wonder Woman. We can be Shuri. We can be those women on screen and those men on screen and non-binary people on screen who are heroes in the world, and that no act of heroism is too small, that we can start with ourselves, learn to be there for ourselves with resilience and fortitude, and then be there for our communities. And so I'm really grateful that this work is going well. We began it in 2013. I founded it with Carrie Goldman, who's a wonderful writer. She writes on child development for New York Times, Washington Post, US News and World Report, CNN, and other organizations. So she is our curriculum director. I serve as CEO. And I'm very honored to say that last Wednesday, we became the mental health program for children and parents at YMCA nationwide. So if you go, thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. So if you go into any YMCA in the country, if there is a program there that's mental health for children and parents, it's ours. We're not in every location yet, but our work is being offered. It's the sole program endorsed by the Y for children and parents.
Amazing.
So hopefully, thank you. Well, we just want to make a world where we can all live long and prosper, right? And that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mary, you have been working on some interesting projects. One, I saw that you have a short film that has recently won some awards called Every Morning. And along with that, you're also working on a fellow-inspired AR project called Iago, the Green-Eyed Monster. And I was looking at the website that you sent, and you have some pretty interesting producers on that project with you. So could you talk about both of those things and how they helped to promote diversity and heroism in the world?
Absolutely. I'm really thrilled to be able to speak to both of those projects because I'm so proud. I really learned in my time being on Discovery how important it was to have inclusion and diversity in front and behind the camera, and how the way we get true representation is by letting our storytellers in all directions, all creatives, be as diverse and inclusive as possible. And that I had a fire under me to be on the producing side as well, and to help create spaces for folks that were in all different sorts of marginalized and minoritized groups. So I'll start with Iago, the green-eyed monster. It's a seed of an idea that was planted in my brain in 2016 when I played, funnily enough, speaking of that year, or 2015, going into, yeah. I played Iago in an all-female production for Harlem Shakespeare Festival, fully as a man, and learned a lot about how I defined honesty. It was very gendered. And I thought as a woman, honesty had to be pure and from the chest, physically, like felt Desdemona had to be pure in this way. But that Iago, who's called Honest Iago, is more swashbuckling and from the hip. And the reason people trust him is because he's a man who says it like it is. And again, makes me think of 2016 because that theme was on the rise of celebrating men who shot from the hip. So from that, playing Iago as a man, I had the seed of an idea of what would Iago look like as a modern woman, a military woman who had ingratiated herself in this male-dominated world by being like the men. And how that actually so much of the plot actually really works if Iago's a spurned woman who didn't get the promotion that she wanted, that the young cis white male got the promotion, Cassio, over her, even though she's been, working for years and expecting allyship from Othello. And there's Othello now. But so that seed had been planted in my brain, and then I was fortunate enough to meet with, which as you're referencing, Julius Tenon, who is the president of Juvie Productions, is married to the incredible Viola Davis, who is a fellow Juilliard alum, and was able to, and he's played Othello 3 different times. And we engaged in a conversation about the play, and I mentioned this concept that I had in my brain, and Juvie Productions is all about bringing voice to the voiceless, marginalized voices. Viola is a goddess among and really creating a space for folks. That whole production company is about giving space to all different types of stories, and obviously a huge focus too on racial diversity. And so exploring Othello, which is a notoriously, or I guess Iago's the notorious villain, but is, a play that looks at prejudice and racism. And within my concept overall, I think it's a play where you can do color and gender conscious casting, where you examine how it's infectious to all of us, and we can look at all different marginalized groups and different roles and how that can pop the play for a modern audience. So Julius beautifully encouraged me to create this adaptation, and we did a VR proof of concept in 2016 through 2018, but then more recently, tying it into what folks can actually look at, the website, Iago the Green-Eyed Monster, Verizon actually approached us in order to promote their new 5G network, how awesome it is, and it's great. They were looking for a 3.5-minute piece that could showcase that, but is also, they are very much wanting to be at the forefront of creating inclusive stories in the content, that it's not just bubblegum. That's fun. I can poke, touch some stuff on this screen and it, does little things, but wanting to tell a story. And so my co-creator, Josh Nelson Youssef, and I wrote a song that is derived from some actual text, Green-Eyed Monster. The chorus is that Green-Eyed Monster collection of sentences Iago says in the play about jealousy. And then all of the lyrics are derived from different lines from the text. My favorite example being, maybe my favorite Shakespeare line, which will tie into our further conversation, is, "Oh, these men," that Desdemona says. And so now that's given to Iago as one of her lyrics that she sings. It's a rock opera sort of vibe. And we did XN suit capture, so a type of mocap. And it's basically a theater piece, AR, so it's something you can download on your phone. You go to that website, you can get it on Android or iPhone, and then you do click and calibrate it to your space, and then you can spend 3.5 minutes listening to the song. It is a dystopian, not so distant future with holograms, and really examines the microaggressions that Iago experienced leading up to this lack of promotion, and how often the monsters that we become are because of the infectious nature of our society that surrounds us. So it's a really fun piece that I'm really proud of. And the song, you can listen to it on any Apple, Spotify, all of that. And it's something that I, on a surface level is, I think, fun to engage with. But I hope, and what we're going to be doing moving forward with the piece is finding venues and places that are both, Shakespeare-oriented folks, AR, XR-oriented folks. We got to premiere at Tribeca last year in their XR exhibit, where we can engage in conversations about microaggressions and about women's, struggle in workplaces where they are told, either make it work or get out, and so I'm really excited of where this can go. I have a lot of large aspirations of writing a whole prequel musical, Wicked inspired at this point. But yes, so that's the shortest version of talking about that. It's obviously something that really is exciting to me. But I do want to speak also to the short film Every Morning that I'm so proud of. My partner, Maddie Goff, wrote it, and the two of us star in it, and we have a guest appearance by our beloved Terry Farrell as well. So it's very sci-fi Trek family. And also, speaking of Trek family, Dr. Erin McDonald, whom we all know, was our lead producer on it. Spacetime Productions, which is her LGBTQ plus women-led production company. It was our production company for the piece, and we completed it in less than a year from seed of idea through, which is quite a feat. And that's how to run a tight ship. No surprise that the PhD in astrophysics was kept us in line, but really wonderful. And our huge goal with that as well was inclusivity in front and behind the camera. We got the Parity in Action badge from Women in Media, over 50% women and non-binary in front and behind the camera. We did just recently win, Maddie and I won for Best Acting Duo at Indie Short Fest, which is great. And we call it a queer sci-fi love story. That's the most cryptic version because it is a lot of fun puzzles. I don't want to say too much more about the actual story. And our wonderful director, Kelly Lohman, who is a fellow improviser of Maddie's and mine, and just had a really awesome, inclusive crew. Ileana Ipes, who is our DP. I mean, it was such an amazing experience because we got to interview multiple potential DPs and a wealth of awesome women that we were all making spreadsheets to know who to talk to in the future, and just found Ileana to be the right fit for that project. And just across the board, a really amazing crew, and filmed it over 4 days at a friend in Woodland Hills. And yeah, it was an amazing, almost a year ago, we filmed it. I guess, yeah, in April, and just the whole process, and being in the post process and seeing our awesome editor, Kate Inge, just seeing a story come together from start to finish is just really fulfilling. And I had that with the AR project as well. But again, why we're here now, and I think the heroism that I've witnessed in these projects is that you need that representation at the top in order to fill those spaces, because unfortunately those who are already at the top, who have been at the top, not all of them recognize the necessary mentorship that needs to happen, because if people aren't given opportunities, they have no room to grow and explore. And our crew, especially on Every Morning, was an awesome mixture of folks who had been doing the thing that they were doing, and then some had the skill set but hadn't been able to try it yet. And I'm just really, really proud of what we accomplished. And we're moving into the festival circuit. We've already obviously been in a few and had some accolades. We got, Outstanding Achievement LGBTQ short as well. And our composer, Amy Summers, won for Best Original Score. So just really proud of it. and we're all heroes. And now let's dig in.
Well, I want to also highlight Dr. Anne Marie Siegel and for her work, not only as a doctor, but having the courage to move into more work in Star Trek fandom, and the courage that it takes to do that and to reevaluate your life and your priorities. And she's been an integral part of many groups and communities in the Star Trek family. So Dr. Anne Marie, I would love for you to explain a little bit about your transition and what that means to you and all of that, because that's pretty heroic, because it's a different kind of work, but it's still important work. Oh, and you're on mute. Sorry.
Oh, that's so, thank you for the introduction. Well, I mean, I would say that obviously science and Star Trek means so much to a lot of us. And starting to watch Star Trek when I was 2 or 3, when Next Generation came on, I was 3 and like an instant fan and loved Dr. Crusher and always wanted to be a doctor anyway. So I had that like goal in life, and you're always working forward to it, like working towards it, because it's just a crazy competitive thing, as is acting and every field. But I mean, as you see, when you start going further and further into the journey, especially as I went into surgery, it's an insanely like sexist field, and it still is today. And the things that you're like exposed to is it just blows your mind. And as like especially at the time, young woman, and you're going through that, it's just, I feel like, first of all, the public needs to know, and more women need to go into it for it to change, but it's very hard to do that if you still have these challenges. So, I mean, one example I told Chase before we move on is just like, for example, to get your actual like board certification for surgery, you have to go into a hotel where you go to different rooms, and there are surgeons who are almost all male on the bed. And then you sit down on the bed by them, and they drill you on surgical topics. It's just like these little things, which are like microaggressions and more, are just shocking. And you're supposed to wear a skirt with like stockings and heels. And it's just like, what even is going on? And you have to worry about like that kind of thing on a daily basis when you have, you know, like actual real knowledge and patience to take care of. It just beats you down so much. And after a lot of time, I mean, my whole life doing that, and you know, all the, like, you sacrifice so much by, I mean, first of all, no man wants to stick around while you're working 100 hours a week, and that's your priority. But also just like, you don't get to see your family and your friends and have a well-balanced life. So I just felt like I proved to myself I could do it. And then time for a life reevaluation. And I just was always so into Star Trek, and Netflix was starting to show all the series again. And it just has always been a comfort blanket. And so I got really into that. And then my littlest brother told me about podcasts, and then I found like another Star Trek podcast, and I happened to Google like, what's Aaron Oxenberg up to these days, and found the 7th rule like as it was starting, and then just got so into the amazing fandom you guys all created. And I thought, like, what better way is there to encourage more women to go into sciences and STEM than to like make it okay through Star Trek and have the world be a better place in that way, because it's all about the representation. And that kind of leads into this talk today, which is the heroines of Star Trek, and how important that is for women to see and everybody to see.
Absolutely. So this discussion or this topic was sparked by an article that I read that I had some qualms with, and I don't want to dive too much into the article, but I would like to discuss the double standards that still exist in this society on labeling heroes versus heroines, and how it's more difficult, it seems, for a woman to garner that label as opposed to a man, because because women are still supposed to be these clean, virtuous, infallible beings. And so one of the first questions I'd like to ask each one of you is, what do you think the standards are for that a hero or a heroine should embody? And then also, who are some heroes in your life that you've looked up to that embody those standards, maybe? And it could be anyone to go first.
I'll just kind of go with what's popping in my head, and we'll see what happens.
Sure.
When I think of a hero, I think of a leader. I think of someone who leads through example, and I think is able to admit their flaws. I think this is something we'll get into later when it comes to examining it, through gender and how sometimes, because we're in this place where we haven't seen as many women in the hero position, that we are then confronted with how we've defined heroism in the past. And I really feel, though, in what I aspire to see in a hero, or how I can be a hero, is someone who leads with compassion, and somebody who, sees people, listens to people, believes people, is someone who is willing to compromise in order to seek a better future for all, and willing to have tough conversations. And I think, again, admittance of flaws, not being self-deprecating, but being able to acknowledge where one might be, short-sighted or not have enough knowledge, and where one's strengths are too, being able to have enthusiasm and power in one's strengths as well. And I think we do see that, in our storytelling. And sometimes it's executed better or not. And I will say that, for me, I certainly, from my recent experience, as I was saying, with Viola Davis and Julius Tenen, I really just believe that they are true embodiments of that they're very human and real, and seeking to, uplift others and great truth. I see that in my parents as well. And I see that in everyone on this panel. And I do try and seek out being around those sorts of folks. Oh, and of course, I feel like at this point, we all know how I and the rest of the Discovery cast feel about Sonequa. I'm not a panel where she doesn't get to be celebrated, but that's because that's what she did from the beginning. Given all the tasks she had to do, she was still organizing cast dinners and game nights, and really embodies that true compassion and humanity and humor, and makes you feel seen, makes you feel respected. She's not going to be checking in with you 24/7, but I often felt, especially since a lot of my material was parallel to hers, but I wasn't interacting with her, I still felt her presence on set. I felt, not because she was posting her picture all over the place, but because I knew that we wanted to elevate this story because she was being a true leader on and off screen.
Mm-hmm. I just want to jump in really quickly with a comment from Eve England out in Wales. She says, too often heroism is just associated with physical strength, which means many strong women are overlooked, which I think that's an excellent point by Eve. And thanks for the comment. And we can talk about that too after everyone chimes in with their responses.
I have to. One of my great heroes is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was the size of a minute. Now there's lots of film of her going to the gym every day, but physical strength was not one of her great. Although she survived pancreatic cancer for a long time.
Wow.
So that's not my measure, although I like being physically strong because I'm a jock. I was raised to be an athlete. My mother was an athlete. My brothers were athletes. My dad, kind of. He played a good game of golf. That's not really the same thing. And Yeah, coordination though. But what Mary said is really important to me, that people are willing to be flawed, which is one of the things I think about. People complain about some of the Star Trek female captains having flaws, but I think no literature works unless there's flaws to the characters, because you need conflict. So one of the things I loved about Deep Space Nine is everybody had big flaws. They had big flaws, and those big flaws gave them something to overcome. And if you can overcome a terrible situation or a difficult situation, that makes you a hero in my mind. If whether you win or don't win isn't the point. It's whether you confront it with dignity, whether you give yourself the chance, and that's huge. So my heroes in life are people like Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's a hero to me. The characters on Star Trek that we love, those are heroes. I love when Kate Mulgrew's character was flawed or Soneqa's character is flawed. Those are heroes to me. Chase played characters that were set up to be sexual objects, and she brought humanity to it. That's a hero to me. She took a bad situation and made it heroic in my mind. So those are the things, and that's why the struggle for inclusion is so important, because it allows people to come to their lives and overcome the obstacles that are put in front of them. That's heroic. So I don't need those two brothers who just got arrested in Romania. There's a big article about them again in the New York Times, who talk about how women all want to be raped, and they're, you know, and if you're not driving a Bugatti or, you know, you're not that's not heroism. That's being small and being afraid. Saying, I have a problem and I'm going to face up to it, is being heroic in my mind. That's my idea. So women, yeah. I've been fighting women's rights. The day they leaked not everybody has to agree with me about abortion. I understand that there's more than one way to look at it. But when they leaked the Dobbs decision, and Eliza Frakes, Jonathan's daughter, and I are standing out on a street corner, and a woman who was 75 said, I've been standing on street corners with signs since I was 18 years old. And I said, me too. I said, me too.
Amazing.
Filling.
I've been walking women into clinics since 1970s. So yeah, women, we're heroic.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought up Leeta, because in posting this panel all over the place, I saw a comment that really got under my skin, and which said that Leeta is not a hero, which I think is totally false, because I do believe that Leeta was a hero in her own right. Helping to form a union in Quark's Bar, that's a pretty big deal. And being the first lady of Ferenginar in helping it to move to a more progressive society, and that is more inclusive, that's pretty heroic to me. And it speaks to, again, to Eve's comment about, you know, heroism isn't always about physical strength. It's more about internal strength and fortitude and you know, ingenuity in life and figuring out how to move through it. So Chase, if you want to speak about that. And
there is so much to say here. Thank you for those comments about Leeta. I wholeheartedly agree for the reasons that you said, and also because Leeta had the courage to love a man who was only pretty on the inside. And that is one of the most Star Trek themes, that we are not just what you see at face value. And I think that's why I'm here on this panel through these many years. I think that's what stuck. But there's so much more to say about that, about all of this. In the heroic journey, in all of our work, in the work that I've focused on with every fiber of my being in the last 10 years, we focused on the fact that in our weaknesses, in our fragility, in our errors, in our flaws, lies our heroism, lies our strength. every story begins, every heroic journey begins with the refusal of the call. The hero is initially afraid or finds some reason, some excuse not to move forward in the way that they could or will eventually become important to society. It brings something that is of value and of help to people. So it is absolutely out of that fear that heroes become heroes. We decide. It's not just something that we're born with. Heroism, like resilience, is not something that you either are or aren't. We can make the choices to, we can make heroic choices. We can make the choices to become heroes or not. And that leads me to another really important, well, no, first I want to go back and say I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Mary and Kitty said about heroes being compassionate and being able to support the people that they lead, leaders being, leaders creating other leaders, leaders bringing up people and recognizing their unique strengths and not forcing people into positions where they aren't able to thrive, but to be able to see who each person is and value that and help them find their own path to being a leader or a hero. And not all of us are leaders or want to be leaders, but to be able to spot that and support that and nurture it. And I think that's a lot of what I think Mary was most likely saying about Sonequa, which she's legendary to all the cast. I mean, how the first person on the call sheet is able to do that and help each person feel valued. And the other thing I want to say is acting on our core values is extremely important as leaders and as heroes. And a lot of people out there, and I used to be one of them, I had a lot of really, really hard years where I was in pain over a stalking incident that led to a lawsuit that was just absolutely horrific. And I lived in fear and anger, rage for a very long time. And it's out of that work that I started mentoring at Homeboy Industries and eventually founded the coalition. It was out of feeling powerless that I'm doing any of this. And just another note, I felt really powerless in some people's eyes as Leeta, because it's amazing how many people, both in the audience and even in the industry, couldn't see beyond that push-up bra. And that was sad. And a lot of times it's an absolute sausage fest in people's minds. And you have to be a strong woman in order to be a strong woman in their eyes. And strength has nothing to do with the physical. In order to make physical strength matter at all, you have to have internal fortitude. And that's what Leeta had. But one more thing that's super important. Being a leader, being a hero is something that any of us can do by acting on positive core values, by acting on them. Love is a verb. And so in order to create the kind of world that we need, that we're working on, where we have equity, where people of color and people of all genders and people, everyone gets to be who they are, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take teaching those boys and men that no, not all women want that horrible thing. Not any women want that horrible thing. I'm sorry, I'm just so blown away by that. Women and men get to be equally powerful. It's not a zero-sum game. We don't want to take anything away from anybody who has it. We deserve our seat at the table. And so that goes for people of color. It goes for everyone. And LGBTQIA plus people, nobody's trying to take anything away. We're just trying to finally make it equal, which it has never been. And so in that, and I'm sorry if I'm going on, but this is really important, acting on our core values, taking time to prioritize and act on our core values. And people say, well, I don't know what to do. Well, how much time are you spending on Twitter every single day, all day? How much time are you spending on what you want to Instagram, or how much time? And I'm not trying to slam that those are important modes of communication. But what do we do? What do we accept as bread and circuses? We accept a lot of things and we spend a lot of time on a lot of things that aren't really on the core values that we claim to have. So if we want that kind of world, we can all make it. There's a place for every single one of us. We just have to get into action because love is a verb.
Yeah. I just want to read one quick comment from J.R. Poole. He says, I feel a wee bit offended someone saying Leeta wasn't a hero. Not all heroes wear capes. Bravery comes in many forms. I worked with some very brave women who stood their ground. So great comment, J.R. Poole. Thank you.
I just want to add like one thing about that too, is that, I mean, it's sort of, we get into this funk, especially with Star Trek, of like, oh, the women of TNG were just caregivers. I'm like, Dr. Crusher was a chief medical officer of a ship. That's not just a caregiver. And she was like running Starfleet Medical. Like that's a like position, like all of that. A counselor is not just a caregiver. Deanna Troi was like a counselor to the captain of the Starfleet like flagship. And even do a certain, like also with the Leeta thing, oh, she's just a Dabo girl. No, she's, like you said, started a union, is like taking care of her coworkers, is amazing with her family. And you see it happen sort of, it has like a sexist tinge to it still. Like, oh, they're just a homemaker. I'm like, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and she's amazing and she's one of my heroes. And you see her in all these live chats being really supportive. She doesn't even watch that much Star Trek. And she's here like making sure she says hi to people. Like, it's just so, it's like a condescending, like sort of like undercover way to sort of just put down women. And it's just could not be less true. Like if you have compassion and empathy and you care about the world and make it a better place, you're a hero. Leeta certainly is a hero.
Absolutely.
And the same goes for
You
the
all
reverse.
are. We all are.
Yeah, my husband is a very compassionate. He's a caregiver.
Yeah.
I think that makes him heroic.
Yeah.
Just as I think it makes Beverly Crusher heroic that she's a doctor, or Deanna Troi that she's a essentially a therapist in the world. The fact that they wore short skirts for the first couple of seasons, I had some trouble with, but that's an entirely different story. Yeah.
But there's a lot of strength that goes into caregiving, caring for somebody other than yourself, and that takes a lot out of a person. And so being a caregiver is one of the strongest roles that you can.
Here's the woman who took care of her husband through through that kidney transplant. You were heroic. You were heroic, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful.
Mary, you were gonna chime in with something.
Oh yeah, I mean, very much in line with, I think that, again, seeing more women, more non-binary folk, gender non-conforming folks in these positions, and seeing the nuance of it, I think is just essential. And that it is like seeing a compassionate woman is also inspiring to the men. Like, and I love that you said that, Kitty, because Armin, so many incredible men who do lead with what have been attributed feminine traits. I mean, I think we're in a moment in our society where we're reevaluating all of these definitions of masculinity and femininity. And that is a huge part of, the piece that with my Iago, like that we're re-examining why we've defined masculinity a certain way. And to me, it's saying toxic masculinity. That's what we don't want. It's not about rescinding all aspects. It's looking at when toxic femininity, when things get toxic, that's the danger, and how we just have lived in this incredibly binary world of whether it be gender or good and bad, like it just completely crushes us to being our true selves, because I think we all live on a beautiful spectrum of expression of self. And if we keep limiting definitions to one gender or the other, it's just never gonna we're never gonna get a dystopian future. And and I think the beauty of where Trek gets to keep evolving is that we are in a place also of examining the quote male gaze that has just shaped our media always. and how we can both respect where it came from and see all the moments where we were able to break through, and then point out the moments where, yeah, were those skirts chosen by men? You know, like we have to have a sharp eye and go, okay, it's not saying that you can't wear a short skirt, but we need to make sure that the woman wearing it feels empowered, and that it's her expression, and not because she's been told the only way to succeed, I mean, on a, like, as an actor, as a character. And there's just so many pressures that still unfortunately exist. I think we've made so many breakthroughs. And I am, very proud of Laurel as a character that I think straddles, so many different definitions of what gender looks like, what leadership looks like, is allowed to be flawed. And I think people had a lot of different reactions to it. And, it's funny because I often say too that we got the reverse Beauty and the Beast in that story. And I was so thrilled because I love playing creatures and feel more akin to the Beast than Beauty, in the most superficial way. I think Laurel is an incredibly beautiful creature. But how we can examine, I felt in the way of leadership, what we were talking earlier, when we switch the gender, then we suddenly go, oh yeah, I guess heroes have always been flawed, but now I'm seeing it on a woman and I'm going, that's not right. And with Laurel, I thought we got to go, oh, this is a trope, or this is an archetype that we've seen so often, but with the genders reversed. So now that we're seeing it with a woman in that position, people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, why is she taking advantage, there's a lot more to parse out there, but I really did appreciate that it was a complicated conversation around all of that, but we got to have it. And I thought the gender reversal allowed that to kind of exist on a sharper level for the audience. And yeah, again, seeing her in a leadership role and ultimately helping save all sentient life in the galaxy. So,
of course.
That
Terry,
too.
your Laurel, it was so powerful. It was so absolutely beautiful and so layered, and the passion and your love for your child and your ability to do all of that as an actress, as a human, as a person, as a Klingon. It was gorgeous. And when I think that all of that, obviously all of that was through a mask. It was such a formidably powerful, beautiful role. And I can't wait to see your the Iago piece. I'm super excited.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to speak to the evolution of heroism that we're still seeing, because we have made strides. Even in the 90s in Deep Space Nine, having First Minister, I always say her name wrong, but Kitty's character, and she's a woman, a powerful woman who is making these decisions for an entire planet. That's pretty ahead of its time, and they were making those strides even in the 90s, and it's still progressing. But I guess maybe if we speak to how we get to the next level, how do we get to there not being this huge divide on and accepting women as flawed, as
there's a lot to look to, but I think we can also go back in literature and see Jane Austen's leading women characters were funny and smart and flawed. And I'm always surprised when people go, oh, they were really stupid. They're not stupid. They're funny. They're flawed. They're brilliant.
Yeah.
I think Lear's daughters were right. I'd have turned on him too. He was terrible to them. Let's take those lessons from the past and then add the lessons that we have today, because women and people of color and non-binary people and gay people and people who are disabled have made strides. And let's put all of those lessons together and move forward. And also understand that all of those people can also be terrible people.
Yeah.
right.
That's what makes life interesting, is that everybody gets a chance to make decisions. And let's let's give them the best shot at making their best decisions, whether it's theatrically or in life. That's the game in my mind.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think I was, saying this to you, and again, it definitely is a huge theme in my Iago project, as well as looking at the society. And I think as actors, we're so trained to, like, we get a character, and of course, we have to have compassion for them. We have to understand why they are the way they are. So, and that's why I love playing gray characters or villainous characters, depending on who's looking at it, because, you can find those seeds. And again, the examination to what Kitty was saying, like, no one exists in a vacuum. So we have to look at, why would a female Iago become a villain? It's not about saying that women are villains. It's saying, let's look at our society and see how easy it is for a woman to get real mad and want to be manipulative and hurt folks, because unfortunately we are creating environments where that's really easy. And so that's the beauty of art as well. I think we always have to straddle where I never like it when it feels like it's glamorizing certain things. But if it can be a mirror, if it can confront us and make us look at why these issues come up. Oh, and of course, someone's trying to give me a call, interrupting. They said, you're flawed, get out of here. But yeah, I think that's the progress, and how to also, I think, Maddie, my partner, I mentioned, their mom speaks to very strong feminist, as my mom is too, and how coming from another era, that the feminists of today, the whatever level of advocacy you have, it's not about going like, you didn't do enough. You should be walking by these women, giving them a huge high five and saying, now I'm going to set up a lawn chair for you, have a soda, sit on the beach. Like, I'm going to keep fighting. And, obviously, I think we all should be empowered to keep fighting till the end, because, nothing's going to ever be fully fixed. But the important, I really value, and I luckily kind of always had that mentality growing up, was I was excited to be a feminist. I loved the term. But I was around a lot of people my age who didn't get that we still needed it, that the ERA hasn't been passed, and like to have the knowledge of the history so that you can respect the past generations and how hard they fought, and to then say, and here's where we need to keep improving. So it can be a compassionate conversation on both sides, but I think that is just where we need to be, is looking at being able to acknowledge the flaws or the progress need to be made, but still coming from a place of respect and acknowledgement. And I definitely feel that so clearly in literally the Trek history. I've been so lucky, being on Discovery, to then have conversation with folks from the shows from the 90s, from TOS, hearing all the different experiences and being so grateful for what y'all created and put forth. And I really feel for the actors as well, because the inclusivity behind the scenes, again, is something we've made leaps and bounds now with the newer shows about, we are seeing Michelle Paradise as the showrunner of Discovery and getting more inclusive writers' rooms. But what y'all did, where the writers' rooms were much less inclusive, still the energy and humanity y'all brought to your characters made them inevitably powerful. And I've just loved being able to talk to all the women who played roles in those shows, because y'all are what made it really pop. Like, you took it to that next level. The writing did, but then y'all went pow. So yeah.
Well, I would like to hear from Chase and Anne-Marie on this as well, but we have 3 minutes left. So if you can quickly sum up your thoughts on this.
Thank you. I want to echo what Mary said, and that was so beautifully spoken, as always, Mary. And it's so important for us to be able to work in whatever way we can. And I just want to say this briefly. I didn't mean to slam Twitter as a medium, because that it is a very important medium. It's just, I think what we do with our time is extremely important. And I would encourage everybody to get out there and to speak, to work in every way possible to give a seat at the table to people to voices that haven't had it. And that's the way that we'll create this world, to One thing that's really important is that when we know, we can't hate someone that we know. And so for you as a strong woman out there, people listening and watching this panel, keep on being you and don't let your voice get squashed or dampened in any way. Be powerful with kindness and compassion, because that is what really will get through in the long run. You know, it's not our anger. We have all rights to be angry, but it's really our clear, powerful, committed, and persistent voices that will carry the message. And so, yes, let's keep doing that.
Mhm. And Anne-Marie, I want to hear from your voice too.
So I echo what everybody said, and I just want to take my minute to say, Melissa, you're just an amazing human, and thank you so much for scheduling this panel and bringing everybody together to talk about such an important topic. And then, since you're so gracious, I'm going to plug your website for you, so you don't have to, which is the Introverted Republic. Walking Art made by Melissa. So it's the introvertedrepublic.com. And you made that amazing Michelle Nichols Trailblazer shirt that you're wearing. And I know that there's no jewelry up on the site yet, but I got this amazing vegan leather cuff that says Deep Space Nine and binary code in beads. And I have another amazing bracelet you made on a similar line, but a drag queen found it when it fell off, and now she won't give it back because it's so pretty.
I love that story.
You're stuff enough. So the introvertedrepublic.com, Walking Art made by Melissa, and there is a promo code when you go there for a discount during virtual TrekCon. And you're just so lucky, and it's such a pleasure to know you. I'm so lucky, and it's such a pleasure to know you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. That's what means a lot. And thank each one of you for being here and agreeing to this talk. And it means the world to me, as all of you do. You all mean the world to me. And I have to say that this gift wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Aaron and knowing Aaron and all that he was. And so thanks, Aaron, for the gift of these amazing people and bringing them into my life, that's for sure. So, and thanks everybody in the live chat who's been typing away and joined us on this panel as well. So hope y'all have a great day. Enjoy the rest of virtual TrekCon.
Ooh, so good to see you, ladies. Congratulations on everything you're doing.
Thank you.